reason we're kind of jumping in today and on the same day as World News Briefing might seem a bit curious to some of you, but there are some things I think that are specific to us that we need to talk about rather than just a general audience of people who are watching from all over the world. And this would be kind of a take heed update, because we're told multiple times, Jesus told us, to take heed that no one deceive you, indicating that there'll be efforts to deceive in the last days. And we're told to watch. And, Peter said, the end of all things is at hand. Therefore, be serious and watchful in your prayers. And all these things are true. We need to be doing all these things. But we also need to be cognizant of what's going on in this age of fake news about what's actually true and what's really happening. And we've talked about a lot of these things in the past updates that we've done. Amir and I certainly have talked about it. I've talked with you directly about some of the things happening in our world. And, the thing that really struck me and the thing that motivated me to do this update this morning was a comment, just kind of an aside. It was just a comment made by a virologist and infectious disease doctor that I was watching an update from, and she just kind of threw something out just as she was casually talking. And here's what she said. She said the lockdown is to slow the impact on hospitals, not to stop COVID-19. She went on to say the fatality rate is going to be the same regardless of whether we lock down or not. And then she commented that herd immunity is what's going to stop the spread. Herd immunity, if you've heard that term and wonder what it means, it simply means that when enough people develop antibodies, the virus will simply die out and no longer have an effect on that particular area or country. Now, it's interesting because we've heard so many things. We continue to hear so many conflicting reports, including this issue of herd immunity. And generally, all virologists and infectious disease doctors and immunologists have stated, at least the ones that I've studied, read, and heard, have said, once that herd immunity reaches 60%, the virus basically will dissipate or simply go away, and it won't impact that culture anymore. But interestingly, we are seeing an overstating of all these statistics by many who are standing in places of the so-called expert and giving us information that is inconsistent with what other science has shown us in time past. Now, in the past, herd immunity has been believed to reach a level of 60% in order to basically quench any further spread of any particular infectious disease. But suddenly, all of a sudden, COVID-19 is going to take 70%. Now, there's a reason I bring this up, and that is because, as I said, we've had so many things that have been overstated, so many things that have basically proven themselves to be untrue and therefore inconsistent with what actual science presents to us. Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx, at one point in time, spokespeople that stand beside the president, had said that the fatality rate in the United States, or the numbers rather, are going to be somewhere around 100,000 to 240,000 people. Now, initially, they were talking numbers like 5 million, or people were throwing those kind of numbers out. And interesting, if we compare what was initially said, the 100 to 240,000, the actual numbers today, and obviously we can't include today's numbers, but the date would be yesterday, April 15th. The U.S. deaths, according to Johns Hopkins University, is 28,544. Now, obviously, that's quite a bit short of 100,000 to 240,000 deaths. Now, looking back to the great state of California, which I'm born and raised in, Governor Newsom said at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic that there would be a 56% infection rate in California. Now, if you understand that California has 40 million people, that number is 25 million people are going to be infected in the state of California by COVID-19, according to the governor in his initial statement. Now, knowing what the fatality rate is, at 56% would equal 25 million, which would then translate into 500,000 people who are going to die of COVID-19 in California alone. Now, the April 16th stats, which again are basically reporting what happened yesterday, the totals from yesterday, so far in California, remember, 40 million people are initially reported 25 million would have the coronavirus. So far, there are 24,424 people that have COVID-19, tested COVID-19 positive results here in California. Now again, that's far short of 25 million, and the estimated 500,000 people dying from this. The actual number as of yesterday is 821 people. 821 people have died of COVID-19 in the most populous state in the United States of America. Now, here's another interesting thing that just broke just this morning from the Daily Caller. It's actually a British newspaper, and the headline reads, and others are picking up this story. Now get this, New York City adds nearly 4,000 people who never tested positive to coronavirus deaths. Now, the article goes on to say that they suspected it, but because testing capacities are limited, they just made the assumption that, these people died of COVID-19 because they had a fever, because they had a respiratory ailment, and all these other things. So it's curious to see these things happening. And again, we've talked about it before, I'll say it again today. They're driving the numbers up and trying to push this into a state that creates panic, and they've been rather successful at it so far. And again, as I've said before, we're not downplaying the seriousness of COVID-19 by any stretch. But here's something else. We've had recent comments lately, about opening up the economy. Now, the president has been talking about it. He said we flattened the curve, and others are saying, Fauci has even come out and said there's some positive indicators. And Fauci and Governor Newsom, in their opening up the economy announcement, said that there are no gatherings in the foreseeable future. Newsom went on to say hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, indicating sporting events. Fauci came out and said there is a way for us to re-engage in watching sporting events, and that's in empty stadiums where the participants in whatever particular sport it may be are in a hotel situation where there are officials who are watching over them, making sure there's no interaction between them outside of what they have to do when they get in on the field or on the court or whatever. So they're talking about this particular aspect, potentially opening up sporting events, but without anybody in the seats. And another interesting facet of this that we're seeing is that now, because we've seen basically every model that so-called government experts have given us has fallen far short of what they expected it to be and reported it to be, and even said, with their response to all of these things that we've seen and experienced with the shutting down of businesses and restaurants and closing of bars, which I don't think is a bad thing myself, but all the other things, and closing down churches as well, at least not allowing us to assemble in one place together. It's interesting that we're seeing all these things, yet positive, but as far as gatherings go in the future, there is no potential of that in the foreseeable future, according to both Fauci and Governor Newsom. Now, here's why I bring this up, and here's why I wanted to kind of title this as a Take Heed update. Hebrews 10:23-25 says, to hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works. Listen close now. Not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is a manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. Now, if you've ever heard me talk about prophecy in the last days, you'll know that that phrase is always associated in Scripture with the last day scenario. And in books like Zechariah in chapter 12-14, that day, or in that day, is a phrase repeated 16 times, speaking specifically of the tribulation. So what Hebrews says, we need to be together all the more as we see the day approaching. Now, here's what I want you to understand. The word assembly means to meet in one place. It doesn't mean to meet online. It means to meet in one room together as a body of believers. Now, here's what I want to say also. That doesn't mean we act foolishly, nor does it mean that we act like fools. I want you to think about this, what's happening right now. Essential businesses are allowed to remain open. And interesting, people are flocking to them by the thousands. Places like Costco, Home Depot, and many of the other places that are open. Curious, grocery stores are open, obviously, but pot stores are open. Liquor stores are open. Apparently those are essential businesses to the health and well-being of our country. However, churches must remain closed for the foreseeable future, or the unforeseeable future. There's no date when we're going to be able to meet again, according to men like Dr. Fauci, as well as Governor Newsom. Now, here's what I want you to understand. They are considering, therefore, the church to be a non-essential gathering. Now, let me also pose this question, and whatever your political leanings may be are irrelevant, but the answer to this question, no matter where you stand, would be the same for all party involvements or association. Who are considered to be President Trump's main support base? Well, the answer is evangelical Christians. So they're targeting us without question, and the time is going to come, and here's the take heed part. The time is going to come where we're going to have to draw the line and choose to obey God rather than men. Even as the disciples were forbidden to teach in the name of Jesus, it was an ordinance given by the Jewish Leadership Council, and they found that they had to make a decision. They had to make a choice. And I believe we're going to be forced into a place where we're going to have to demand our rights to responsibly gather and to encourage those who are in at-risk categories to stay at home. But make no mistake, there is an agenda behind what is going on. Every model that has been proposed has fallen far short of the numbers they have presented, and therefore they've been talking about what's happening next year. This could come back next year. We're hearing that from Fauci and others, that we can't be resting on the fact that the curve is flattened, or the fatality rates are lessening and leveling off, or the infection rate. As a matter of fact, on April 15th, the Harvard Research Group said, we may need social distancing until 2022. In other words, this thing isn't going to go away, regardless of the fact that infectious disease and virologists who are experts in the field say, once we reach herd immunity, this thing is going to go away, just like everything else has in the past. Now, in light of what I just said, I want to throw out some balance here. Now, 1 Peter 2:13-14, we're told to submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether to the king as supreme, speaking of someone who is a president or prime minister, someone in that capacity, or to governors, local authorities, as to those who are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers and for the praise of those who do good. Now, if we look at Romans 13, we'll see that God has placed limitations on the role of government. It isn't to provide or supply the daily needs of people. God has said, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and he'll add all those things unto us. And I'm not saying that the government supporting people in times of need is a bad thing or an unnecessary thing, but that's not where we're to focus our attention, as one who supplies all the things that we need. The Lord is our provider. There's no question about that. And he provides through our own efforts and our work and doing the labor that he has assigned us to do. Now, the reason I wanted to bring that up is because the government's responsibility is to punish evildoers and to praise those who do good. And this is found in Romans, according to Peter, it's found in Romans 13 as well. Now, our own government, regarding this forbidding of gathering responsibly as Christians, even though you can go to a place that has 1,500 people inside its walls, every store, if you've gone to the grocery store of late, you know that there's a social distancing line outside and inside. So they look at these people who, really don't have any relationship with one another, even though the only shared thing that they have is that they're hungry and they need food or paper products or whatever, and that's driven them to the store. But the government believes that this necessary element will lead people to act responsibly. And I have to say, I haven't seen anybody getting out of line or acting foolishly. Everybody has stood patiently in line outside the stores that I've gone to, inside of Costco. Now that things have settled down over the toilet paper issue, people have acted reasonably and respectfully of one another. Now, why can't we do that in the church? Now, this is the question that's going to come up. This is one that's going to be posed because we're already seeing precursors to it. Now, the fact is, the First Amendment of the United States Constitution says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Now, again, I share this as a take heed moment, because the truth is, if you think there's nothing more than concerns for our health behind all this, you need to do a little bit more study and think again. Every single thing that the experts have said have been wrong, and yet now they're telling us here's the right thing to do. There's talk now about vaccine cards. There's talk about biometric IDs and digital currencies and things of this nature. And make no mistake, these things are precursors to what's going to ultimately develop during the tribulation period. These things have to be in place beforehand for them to be implemented by the Antichrist. Now, back to where we started with this virologist and infectious disease doctor. COVID-19 is going to do what it's going to do. It's going to do just like the flu does. It's going to run its course just like the common cold season does every single year. But unlike the flu, which, by the way, infects 1 billion people a year and kills 500,000 people every single year, COVID-19 is more than an illness. It's more than a pandemic. It's a vehicle that's being used to advance the cause of the globalists. Now, I want you to consider something by comparison, and I've heard really odd statements by people that you shouldn't compare this to past pandemics. Well, why not? I mean, that's exactly what we ought to be doing. We ought to be judging the reaction that we've seen with COVID-19 against reactions in the past, including the H1N1 swine flu of 2009 and 10. It killed some 12,469 people in the United States. Now, I want you to think about this, and let's measure the reaction we're all experiencing today. More people died in the United States of the Spanish flu in October, 1 month, just in the United States, in October of 1918, than have died of COVID-19 since this began December 31st up until this day all around the world. In other words, in October of 2018, 195,000 Americans died in 1 month. That's 6,290 people a day died in 1 month in the United States alone. In contrast, 138,000 people around the world have died of COVID-19 since December 31st, 2019. Now get this, that's 1/1,000th of 1% of the total world's population. Now those who have studied the Spanish flu that ran basically from 1918 to 2020, portions of each of those years and all of 2019 in between, they have estimated that somewhere between 2.7 and 5.4% of the world's population, 1.8 billion people in 1918 on the surface of the earth, 2.7% and 5.4%, somewhere between there, is the percentage of the world population that died of the Spanish flu. And again, let me reiterate, COVID-19, 1/1,000th of 1% of the world's population has died from this pandemic. Now, interesting article from the Texas Medical Association just published last month regarding their studies of the 1918 pandemic. Listen to what they said. During the 1918 pandemic, various cities closed schools in the United States as control measures. However, listen close now, however, a survey of cities by the U.S. Public Health Service during 1919 to 21 failed to demonstrate any differences in illness rates between cities that closed schools and those whose schools remained open. Now get this, some studies, particularly reviews of case rates in urban areas such as Chicago, found more cases developed among students after a holiday than when schools were in session. In other words, more people got it by staying home than staying in school. Now, let me just encourage you in closing, if you haven't listened to or watched on YouTube a message I did a couple of weeks ago called Are We There Yet? Are We There Yet? And it details a lot of the specifics regarding what's happening in our world today. But I have to say, I found this rather startling and stunning, what this doctor said, that this thing's going to run its course. And this has nothing to do with stopping COVID-19. We've shut down the economy. We've sent everybody home. We've told everyone to shelter in place, not so we can stop COVID-19, but rather so we don't overburden the hospitals, which is a good thing. But the doctor went on to say, once everybody is out and free to move around, COVID-19 is going to run the course it was always going to run. The percentages are going to remain the same. The fatalities are going to be the same. It's just going to be over a more extended period of time. So, listen, someday, and I believe it's not too far off, there's already a case. 3 California churches are suing the governor, Gavin Newsom, for the shutdown order or the prohibition against gathering. And we're going to be asked or demanded in coming days to not gather, even though other businesses are allowed to open. We're not going to be viewed as people who are smart enough to be responsible and to sit 6 feet apart and tell people who are in the at-risk categories to stay home. And we're going to continue to be refused access to obey the Word of God, which again is a mandate to not forsake being in one room together. Now, again, we don't want to be foolish, we don't want to be fools, but we don't want to let the government run outside its God-ordained boundaries. Our own First Amendment of our own Constitution says Congress is prohibited in passing laws that prohibit us from collectively gathering together as Christians. Now, we have a responsibility to one another. I can't emphasize that enough. But here's the thing. Here's why I called this a take heed moment. One day, not too far off, I believe we're going to be asked to choose who it is we serve. And they're trying to separate us from one another. We need each other. We need to be together. I was telling my wife, it's been interesting as I have done these services this past few weeks to an empty room. The first couple of weeks, it was like, okay, this is what we have to do. But this past Sunday, I guess partially because it was Easter, it was just awful. It was an awful thing to have to do, to go up and share about the most exciting thing that's ever happened in the course of human history with nobody in the room. Now, I know you were out there. I know some were out there watching online. Appreciated the comments and those who checked in as they were watching. But it's just not the same. Why? Because we need to be together. So it's coming. Be ready. Be prayed up. Make sound decisions. Don't act foolish if you're in an at-risk category. When the doors open, whether it's through legal means or whether somebody, as some governors are already saying, the church is an essential entity. It's an essential business, so to speak, and churches need to be open and people need to come to church. And when that begins to sweep through the nation, we're going to be required to make decisions, and we need to make good ones. But first of all, we need to be ready. We need to recognize that it's coming, and there is a battle that is raging, and there indeed is an agenda that is being furthered, and the vehicle that's being used is COVID-19. Make no mistake. So let's be wise. I pray you all stay healthy. I pray that God blesses your family with health. We need to pray for the comfort of those who are fighting this like never before. So let's keep our eyes lifted up. And as we were admonished to, first and foremost in Hebrews 10:25, let's hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, considering one another, watching out for one another, and indeed stirring up each other to love and good works. Well, that's it for now. I don't know what's happening with my phone here. But anyway, God bless you guys. Love you guys. Look forward to seeing you who call CCT your physical home someday soon. But pay attention to what's happening around us, because there is an agenda. There is a devil. He has servants, and we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. We recognize that. But principalities and powers have long been used to influence nations and peoples, and that is continuing to this day. So God bless you. Remember, tonight, 6 p.m. West Coast time, West Coast Daylight Time, World News Briefing, hischannel.com. Tomorrow morning on Behold Israel's Facebook page, myself and Amir Tsarfati will be taking questions live. And then Sunday, I think a message that's good for all of us, and that's a reminder that it's in God that we trust. Next Wednesday night, Don Stewart and I at CCT on this very Facebook page, as well as live streaming from cctustin.org. So God bless you, and we'll see you soon. Keep your eyes on Jesus.